What's up, YouTube gamers? Young Soul, dropping another video. And I got a question for you. Do Xbox fanboys put Uncharted 4's multiplayer at a higher standard than Halo 5's multiplayer? Now, let me back up for a second. These are the same Xbox fanboys who claim that they're too busy playing games, and yet for the past day or two since Halo 5 is released, all I keep seeing is them tweeting and making videos about PlayStation. I don't understand it. This is the biggest game the Xbox One will ever have this generation, Halo 5. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. That's a bit hypocritical. But let's move on. Do Xbox fanboys hold Uncharted 4's multiplayer to a higher standard than than Halo 5? What do I mean by that? As you can see right here on the screen, you see that Uncharted 4's multiplayer will be 900p 60 frames per second, as opposed to the single player 1080p 30 frames. I don't really have much of a problem with that. I don't really play multiplayer too heavy in Uncharted, but when you're playing against other people, the whatever microseconds, you know, as far as getting a headshot versus missing the shot completely, I can see why 60 frames is more important. But I'm here to talk about how, as usual, the Xbox fanboy will throw away their good word if they see a potential to slam Sony. They will throw away their credibility in a second if they can slam Sony. And what do I mean? These Xbox fanboys are all over the place. Even though, like I said, Halo 5, the biggest game of their generation, on the Xbox One anyway, just came out, and they're busy talking about how Uncharted 4 will be 900p 60 frames per second. In the multiplayer, 900p 60 frames per second, as you can see, again, on screen. But if you go real quick over to, and all these links will be provided as usual in the description. I'm not making stuff up. If you go over to this article right here about Halo 5, you'll see how they're saying it's clear that hitting 1080p while maintaining 60 frames per second would not have been possible in Halo 5, but rather than simply opting to render at a lower resolution across the board, 343 has implemented one of the most impressive dynamic resolution scaling systems we've seen to date. They go on to explain it, but here's what they say. The lowest recorded value we find is 1152 by 810. That is 810 pixels. That's 810p. 810p by 60 frames per second. 1168 by 810. 1440 by 840. So you're looking at 810p, 810p 60 frames per second, 840p 60 frames per second, and then they do get above the 900p, and finally they don't quite get all the way to a full 1080p. I'm sure they do at some points. But my point is, the same people who are bashing Uncharted 4 for having 900p 60 frames per second is looking, they're quite all right with 810p 60 frames per second on their shooter. Like we're talking about the gold standard of Xbox One shooters is supposed to be Halo. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Somebody tell me where I'm wrong. Isn't the gold standard of Xbox One shooters Halo 5? And you're looking at drops of 810p 60 frames, 840p 60 frames. And before I know, they'll say, but dynamic resolution means most of the time it's at 1080p, right? Well, same article. Let's move down a little bit. It says, while the dynamic resolution system is impressive, the reality is that the game spends the overwhelming majority of its time well under full 1080p. So before Xbox fanboys get to saying, oh, it's majority of the time, majority of the time it's well under 1080p. This is the gold standard that Xbox fanboys live and die by. That is well under 1080p 60 frames per second. But when you turn to Uncharted 4's multiplayer, 900p 60 frames is unacceptable. Listen to every Xbox fanboy for the past day or two. Unacceptable. But their gold standard somehow drops below 900p in some cases, 810 1080p and 840p 60 frames, and very seldom gets to 1080p 60 frames. Okay? I'm just finding it amazing that, like I say, in the first place, that their biggest game is out and they're busy talking about PlayStation, these Xbox fanboys, and B, they're sitting there harping on Uncharted 4's multiplayer for being 900p when their gold standard of multiplayers, Halo 5, barely ever reaches 1080p and actually in some cases drops lower than 900p. So you let me know. Let me know. Are Xbox fanboys really into playing games, or they just want to cry about PlayStation? You tell me in this, in the comment section below, and I'll holler back. Peace.